Hello, everyone. I'm Dominique Johnson-Lindsay, and I want to welcome you to the Active Listener podcast by Lightspeed. As a lifelong learner and the daughter of a Navy veteran who became an elementary school teacher, education and service are in my DNA. This foundation, paired with my love of technology, led me to these conversations with remarkable minds shaping the K-12 landscape. Join us as we amplify these vital voices and explore how active listening remains foundational to educational excellence. Whether you're an educator, administrator, or someone passionate about the future of education, there's something here for you to learn.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Active Listener podcast. My name is Dominique Johnson-Lindsay, and today I'm here with Dr. Annalies Corbin, founder and CEO of the PASS Foundation and one of Central Ohio's remarkable women. For more than 25 years, she's been transforming education by connecting classrooms to real-world problem solving through hands-on STEM, community partnerships, and innovative learning spaces that prepare students for the future. So today on this podcast, we're going to explore how real-world learning comes to life while communication and sound clarity matters in these dynamic environments, and ultimately how the PASS Foundation is helping students build the skills they need for tomorrow, which we know is so important. So with that, Annalies, welcome to the Active Listener podcast.
Thank you so much, Dominique. I'm really excited to be here and I can't wait for our conversation. So thank you.
Yes, thank you. So I have to start off by saying I was so excited for this because, of course, you talked to our CEO, David Solomon, and you blew him away so much so that he said, you have to talk to this person. She should be on our company's podcast. And so I knew then that it was going to be a great conversation. So just know I am genuinely so excited to have this conversation today.
Excellent. I'm excited as well. And it was fun to be able to learn so much more about the work that your company does. So that's fabulous. Thank you.
Yeah. So I want to kick it off at the beginning, obviously, and just talk about founding the PASS Foundation and kind of what that evolution has looked like over the last 25 years. So jump in wherever you like, but kind of tell me about how you even got started doing it and, again, that evolution.
Absolutely. So PASS Foundation was started by a group of applied research scientists. And that's a big way of saying that, we were a lot of professionals in a variety of different scientific disciplines. I'm an anthropologist and archaeologist, but we had people from museums, from chemistry, from documentary film, from physics, from all these different applied sciences from around the world that came together and said, hey, there's something really strange that's going on in the world of education today. Almost all of us were university professors, or we ran labs or museums. And so we were this recipient of undergraduate or graduate students or young professionals coming into these scientific disciplines. And these were all super smart young people, incredibly capable. They were ready to tackle the world, all those things that happened to us in our early 20s. But we were noticing a trend, and the trend really was tied to this idea that these are super smart individuals who could take tests and, entrance exams to get into the university like champs. But then when they were showing up in our classes, in our field programs, or in our labs, we noticed that they were lacking some fundamental skills that we felt like at that point in their lives they should have had. A lot of basic communication skills, some problem-solving skills, the ability to work collaboratively, all those things that we know that to go into the world and to be successful, especially from a business and industry standpoint, if you don't have these skills, you're going to get left behind, right? And oftentimes through no fault of your own. And what we know is that it's because we haven't practiced those skills. We haven't been placed in environments that encourages us to practice those skills, to get them wrong, to correct them, to really, really hone those abilities. And so the PASS Foundation was really born of this idea that maybe there's a disconnect between the world of work and post-secondary and K-12 and what's going on in our communities and where people are coming from and the experiences that they're making those educational journeys with, because we all have stuff, right? We have a lot of stuff that we carry with us through life, and that stuff is real, and we need to take into account all the pieces and parts of who we are as individuals. So we were hoping that by asking a different set of questions about why the system was doing what it was doing, that we could get to a different set of solutions that would empower students to have the agency and the wherewithal and the confidence that they need to go out into the world and honestly to do amazing things.
I love that. And you drive home so many kind of points that I just love because one, I think agency is so important
Mhm.
amongst any environment. That is one of the things, at Lightspeed, we really hone in on the teacher's agency as well as the student's agency and how they get to participate in lessons. And so I love the ideal of just thinking through how
Mhm.
can we make this a thing because a lot of times when people come in and want to provide solutions, especially when they're external, it feels like a lot of we just want to change things. It almost feels like telling people you're not doing something right. And I
Right.
love the way you framed a lot of the work around like, well, this probably hasn't been practiced, and this is probably something that can improve, but ultimately, just the ideal of we need to come in and shake things up is
Mhm.
rooted in a place that, like, we just want you to get to this next step. And so
Correct.
I definitely love that. I also think one thing is kind of interesting, just dovetailing to my next question, is all the different backgrounds that you all
Mhm.
had coming together at the Pass Foundation. Um, we know that everybody is really excited about STEAM or STEM kind of
Mhm.
work, but there is another side of that that requires connection and communication that people are often like glossing over. So talk to me about what it looks like for you all to kind of combine these two things and how do you make that message so clear that it's not only technical but also this like interpersonal skill that has to come in to ultimately make things a success.
Yeah, and I think that that's the strength of one of the core elements of who we are as an organization. So PAST, PAST, is an acronym, keep it or leave it, right? But it stands for Partnering Anthropology with Science and Technology. And I actually think that to answer your question, that really hones in on that A space, right? So anthropology is the science of humanity. We're studying what does it mean to be human? And the reality is that the middle of everything we're doing is a person. There's a human that's engaged in their environment, they're tied to their community, they're working with their family, they're engaged in a job, involved in policy, so many different elements, right? And we're never ever going to be great research scientists or great artists or great musicians, great mathematicians, great all of those sorts of things, right? If we're also not a really solid human in the middle of that. And so for us, that's where everything starts. And so for example, I have a new book out. It's called Hacking School: 5 Strategies to Link Learning to Life. And one of the strategies is around cultural relevancy or responsiveness. And that's because if we are not building, tailoring, and thinking about the people in the middle of our work, we are never, ever going to get that work right.
I love that. And I guess to add on to this, as you're doing this work, what does the response look like? So I can only imagine
Mhm.
because obviously I have not been in these environments, but what does the response look like for people experiencing the work that you all do?
It's deep engagement. And that's the thing that I love about it so much. So, whether you're an educator trying to change the way your educational environment looks, feels, responds to your learners, or you're a learner and you get to be the one in the middle of all of the fun and the wow, right? Or you're a family, or you're a business and industry partner that's ultimately going to be receiving these young, fully formed people as part of your workforce of the future. For everybody involved, it should be around deep, deep relevance, and it should be around deep, deep engagement. The reality is, right, we want our humans across the world, right, to be deeply motivated, to love who they are, to love where they are, to love the work that they do. And the only way we're going to be able to do that is if we can create a robust set of experiences that allow our learners to really figure out what do they love? Like, I think I might want to go into healthcare, but oh my gosh, what if I discover I don't like blood or bodily fluids, right? But I'm still really interested in healthcare because, I had a relative who was sick and the healthcare system did amazing things for them. Or I have a relative who was sick and the healthcare system failed them miserably, right? So I'm deeply committed to helping people go through whatever that journey happens to be. But a lot of students don't realize that the healthcare system is as is as wide as we are tall, if not more, right? There's so many jobs, but if we can't give a student the opportunity to experience all of those things, how are we ever going to get there? And the work that your company does is a fabulous example of that, right? So if we don't understand the way the physical human, the body internalizes, grabs communication, hears, listens, processes sounds, we're never going to be able to engineer a set of devices or circumstances to make sure that every learner can hear. Right?
Absolutely. And that is key because I often feel like, with us, we know that it's something that's so overlooked. We engage in conversation every day, but that extra step of just understanding what does the science of all of this look like? It was mind blowing even to me coming into the company over the last 5 years of just understanding that experience because we've muted a lot of what it means for us to do the work that we do. And I imagine it kind of flows that same way on your side. But we muted a lot of this. This experience can be improved. We are used to straining. We're used to teachers talking loud all day, practically yelling. And so to just come in and try to shift that environment, it feels so different, but when it happens, then it feels so good. Like you can always tell the impact in the classrooms. You can always tell even the connections between students and teachers, it changes so drastically just by the teacher being able to have a calmer voice, the students being able to participate more. And so I always look at unique experiences like this and try to say, for us, I know people, everybody cannot afford a system.
Right.
What does it look like to use kind of the real world experiences that you all are trying to prepare people for if they can't, participate through the past foundation or if they don't have the bandwidth needed to do this? Like, what are those kind of starter steps where you kind of get people engaged in like real world experiences that ultimately like impact this foundation that we're talking about?
Absolutely. And that's a great question. And I think that first and foremost, you can tackle it from a couple of different sort of sides or different venues, right? So the first one is if you are a classroom teacher, formal or informal, right? So if you are an educator, you can take whatever it is you're teaching, even if it's canned curriculum that you're coming from one of those districts that says on Tuesday we have to be on page 34 of book XYZ, right? Even if you don't have a lot of agency as an educator, right, around what you teach, when you teach it and how you teach it, you can still take that curriculum and make it about your learners. And I think that's probably the most important thing is we have to recognize who these learners are that are in your classroom or in your program or in your after school program or in your club or even on your sports team, right? And if you can't make whatever it is you're trying to teach, whatever it is you want them to engage with you in, meaningful to them, they will not be engaged with you. Bottom line, right? They will ignore you, they'll blow you off, they'll just sort of do it a little bit, but they're not going to love whatever that thing is with you. And we can all make those micro adjustments to the things that we're teaching to make our content accessible to our learners, whatever that happens to mean for whoever they happen to be, right? That's first and foremost. The other thing that we can do is we can collectively as a community, however you want to define that, make sure that our learners get truly meaningful opportunities to try things, to try stuff, right? Because again, Kids don't necessarily know what they don't know, and they certainly don't know what they might love unless they give it a try. But opportunities are not opportunities if a student has barriers to getting there, to paying for it, to participating, to even knowing about it. And those barriers are very real. So part of the challenge that we all collectively have is looking in our community, seeing the things that are offered, and figuring out how to get kids involved in them.
So true, and so good. So aligned with the ideal that we can start small, but this is something we can't ignore. And I think
Absolutely. Yeah.
that is abundantly the best solution to most things in
Yeah.
schools, and most things in life. We would love to have an overhaul of any and everything that we could, but talking about those micro movements, like that is a good way to just categorize what's necessary in order to continue to move the needle forward. This kind of hinges on something that I think is really important, and that's almost where education is headed. So I see a lot of people talk about this, and that's basically the world that we are preparing students for today is something we really don't know exists. Like most of the jobs they will work, we won't know what they are. We're preparing them for a blank slate in a lot of ways. And so talk to me about what do you feel like is foundational with what you all do that really aligns with the ideal of preparing for, ambiguity basically, but being able to be aligned with like success, because we do want to prepare students and teachers for that matter to be able to do this in a way where we think the outcomes are going to be more successful than not.
Absolutely. And again, that's a great question because the reality of it is we don't know, right? The rate and pace of change right now is unlike anything we've seen in a very, very long time. And I don't use the word ever or never, right? Because we have seen rapid technological shift across human history. It's just it's coming at a rapid pace right now, and it's secular, right? So in the sense that a change is coming, and then literally moments later the version 2 shows up, and then moments later version 3 shows up. And so it's that rapid prototyping that is happening now that is on a scale we've not truly seen before, and that's the big difference. But because of that, your point is a really good one. We don't know what these jobs are that these kids that we are teaching are going to be finding their way to in the future. And so I think that when I step back and think about the work that we do at PAST, one of the things that's really important to us is that we want to help students be curious, be engaged, ask questions, be confident. Confidence will take you so far, right? If you're not afraid to say, A, I don't have a clue what you're talking about, so help me understand what we're doing here, right? But that takes a level of confidence, and we have to be able to allow kids to practice being confident. We have to teach them to problem solve, but more importantly, we really need to get kiddos comfortable with failing, with not always having the right answer, not having the right answer in the right moment, to be able to say, that didn't work, let's go back and try. Because the truth of the matter is, the greatest learning happens when something fails, and then I have to try to think about it differently and try the next thing, right? If I get it right the first time and move on, I might remember that success, but I really remember the application of how I got to that right answer or to that right issue, maybe or maybe not. But if I fail, I will likely never forget. And so we're not talking about failing for the sake of failing. We're talking about failing for the sake of learning. So those are the types of things that are really important to us. We want to create safe places for kids to be kids, to put on their capes and their superpowers and say, I'm creative, I'm curious, and I have some possible answers. I know some stuff, right? Because as adults, we often assume that kids are just kids and they don't actually know because they don't have enough life experience. Well, it's true they don't have as much life experience as we do, but kids have a boundless set of curiosity that as we get older, there's beautiful science out there that shows we lose it. We are less creative than little ones are. right? Because we have all these boundaries and constraints that we have just micro added into our own toolbox. So we know that this answer over here is not possible because the physics are wrong. Well, okay, yes, that's true, but so what? For the kid that doesn't understand the physics and comes up with this out of the world solution, yeah, that direct application might not work, but there's a piece of the idea that is revolutionary and it might be just the thing we all need. That's what I love about learning.
That's perfect. And I don't think we view it that way oftentimes,
Hmm.
but even hearing it, and I am mom of a 3-year-old, and the way you're talking about it is perfect because you do want to keep that
Hmm.
momentum going, that excitement, that lust for learning. Like you want to keep that going. And I feel like the best way is in that environment that gives enough leeway to curiosity, to being wrong, to all of the things, to listening and just taking their input, like, oh, I don't know if that sounds quite right, but what about this? Like having that
Hmm.
engagement with them is so, so important. And it kind of really directly ties into how we feel about just the idea of voice, because
Hmm.
for us, the job is to ensure that every word is heard. And that goes both ways. It's when
It
students
does.
are talking and when teachers are talking. We think it's important. So,
It is. And you know, one of the things that really I think is such a shame that we have tried to process the love or joy of learning out of our learners, right? So think about this, right? Kids learn through play. They have imaginary friends. They have imaginary conversations. They have imaginary, sword battles or fly into space, all that pretend stuff that young kids do that is just epic brain development happening in real time, and you can literally watch it if you step back and watch what's going on. And so, this idea that as students matriculate into a more formal education system, like in kindergarten and so on, we really, really start to process that sort of play aspect out of what they're doing. And when we do that, we're putting a lid on learning in many ways. Yes, kids need to learn a lot of other skills, and we have to make room for them. But we can truly make room for both. We have to choose to make room for both.
absolutely. So, one thing I wanted to ask about, because I feel like you see this in practice in a couple ways, obviously in the work you do just with the PANS Foundation, but also through your podcast,
Mhm.
Learning Unboxed, you get to talk to people about all these different experiences. So, I kind of want to ask you a two-part question. And one is just talking about the origin of the podcast and how that
Mhm.
came to be. And then part two is talking about what have you learned after literally, I think I looked it up and it's like literally way over 200 episodes at this
Mhm.
point. What have you learned about having these different conversations with people who are inside and around the school system about, some of these topics that we've
Mhm.
just talked about today so far?
Well, I started learning Unboxed for a couple of different reasons. The first one was that, at that point, I had been doing this work for 20 plus years, and I have seen incredible innovations in education, just some of the most amazing things you've ever seen. And you're just like, oh my gosh, oh wow, this makes my heart feel so good. And these kids are incredible. And I've seen really, really tragic examples of what not to do, right? I've seen just stuff that will just, it'll beat you to death. And I've seen these epic, what I call epic near misses, kind of in the middle. And the other thing is that I heard all the time that the educational system is broken, but it's not broken. It's functioning exactly as it was designed to function 150 years ago. It's become obsolete is the problem. And because we're confusing this idea of brokenness with a big giant, and education is a huge system, right? It's a global system. It's a system of systems, right? Intertwined all together. So it's huge. Huge systems are very difficult to change just by nature of their design. And because you have all this stuff going on, there's so much chatter about all the things that were wrong in the world of education. And educators in particular were really, really being beat up a lot. And it's just not fair because there are incredible people in the world of education. Some of the most passionate, creative people you will ever meet are teachers, or the people who support teachers, right? And so I really wanted to create a program that could highlight all the amazing things that are going on in the world of education. So that's one element. The other element is that I was really, really curious from a research standpoint. As an anthropologist, I have a research background, so it brings me full circle as well, right? I was really, really curious about why some things are so fabulous in the world of education and why 10 years after they were started, they're still there. They persist. We're still calling them a best practice. Kids still love them. Families will show up. Teachers don't want to leave, or if the teacher that started this great thing leaves, the program persists. I wanted to understand why that was happening. And so Learning Unboxed gave me an opportunity to have those conversations, but more importantly, to ask all those questions that I, as the curious learner and the researcher, wanted to know. Well, what makes it special? Can we find some secret sauce, right? And that's where those 5 strategies in the book come from. None of them are new. But, when I distill down, to your point, almost 300 episodes, I think by the middle of February, we'll hit 300 episodes. That's exactly what I found is the things that were remarkable, that were working, that were lasting, that were sustaining, that kids loved and the adults loved who were involved with them. They all carried those 5 elements. They had lots of other things, but those 5 were always there every single time. And what that said to me is there are some fundamental things that make programs in an educational setting fabulous. And those are the things we should be spending our time, energy, and effort on.
I, first of all, I'm not a researcher by any means. I'm just a person that does deep research on things that I'm curious about. And so just to hear how this is unfolded is so aligned with how I think about things, because I'm always thinking there is something there to these little problems that we have where there has to be more to this story than we're seeing. People are just well, it is what it is. I'm no, it has to be something there. So just to hear how you unpack this, first of all, I love that. I think the other thing, and I kind of want to ask you about this in the context of your book, is talking about what people can get out of knowing that the 5 strategies obviously is a big part of how the book is presented. But ultimately, what is the goal when writing this book that you wanted people to get out of it, especially if you were somebody net new, just coming in, whether they had a background of you in the past foundation or not, but just what would you want them to get out of the book? How do you think it's applicable to just the real world setting?
That we don't have to do it the same way because we've always done it that way. I mean, and you can apply that to anything, not just education. But the primary, I guess, big sort of push of the book was really around that idea, right? That just because we've always done it that way doesn't mean that we need to. And let's embrace the what's possible or the what if. What if instead? Take your pick, right? And so the book is really trying to honor these incredible educators, the stories that I've learned or I've been told, right, through Learning Unboxed, and the practical application that we've seen at PAST on the ground in communities that made the decision to do education differently. So it's a book that's for parents who want to be able to have tools in their pocket to go advocate at their school board or with their building administrator or even with their child's teacher. It's for teachers who want to say, I don't want to do it this way anymore. I'm done with the pacing guide. I am a fully formed adult. I came into the profession of teaching because I have something to contribute, and darn it, stand up and let me contribute. To educators and administrators, to college professionals, it's really a tool, right? So the 5 strategies, yes, it goes through it, but more than that, it's to give us all permission to imagine what if.
I love that. So my last kind of question really is wrapped around technology, because obviously that is a big deal. And we operate in the ed tech space in a way that's a little bit different, being a hardware company, where I think the more commonality is much more around software and obviously our newest favoriteest thing, which is AI.
Yeah, yep.
But the reason I wanted to bring it up was because you talked about your book being a tool. And I often see Lightspeed that same kind of way. We are a tool. We are a support tool to make an improvement in a classroom. That's the way we want to see that. And we often not that we feel conflicted, but people often feel conflicted by what tools can be, what they actually are. So talk to me about when you kind of share this book with people and the ideal of your book being a tool. Do you impress upon people how to move from ideal to implementation and what that kind of looks like? Because I know with any tool, change management is always a big part of it. And as much as, this conversation has been wrapped in, you can just do a thing, people often don't feel like they have the permission to. So knowing that you kind of see different sides of it as far as, teachers, but also administrators and other people, what do you feel like is the path to like truly move the needle?
I think ultimately when we think about tools, we have to remember what they can do for us, what they can do with us, and what they cannot do for us or with us. And we have to think about both sides of that equation. It's a balance, right? It's a balance. And whether we're talking about AI or the internet or phones or devices or measuring tools or a book, right? It doesn't make any difference. What can this tool do for and with me? And what can this tool not do for and with me? And have some real solid understanding of those two things, because then we can design with all of that in mind. And it's that design process, that mechanism by which I'm going to try to solve for something. I have a need and I think that this tool is going to help me be better or to be able to do what I need to do. Great. But if I don't understand what it can and cannot do for me, then I'm not going to be able to actually apply it in a way that's going to get me where I'm trying to go. And I think that that's always the case with tools. And sometimes I think that we get stuck assuming that a tool is going to be an end all and be all, right? What was it? 30 some odd years ago. Oh gosh, probably now it's been more than that. It's probably closer to 50 years ago. Oh my gosh, I'm showing my age. Remember when the internet showed up and everybody was having the same conversations about the evil internet that they're having about the evil AI or the joy of the internet or the joy of AI. This is not a new conversation. Not a new conversation at all. It's just a new tool, right? And ultimately, can we imagine living in a world without the internet? If I've got to go look something up, I want to do my online baking, I want to do, order my groceries, whatever those things happen to be, it's a tool, right? It's the same with all of these other pieces and parts, right? And so I think part of it is just getting people to understand how the human relationship is with the tool. And there is no better example of what it means to be human than our ability to actually use tools. It's a defining characteristic of humanity. So let's not lose sight of that. And I think that that will maybe help everybody ground themselves in the reality. But if I can't think and I can't problem solve and I can't communicate and I can't be collaborative, you can give me all the tools in the world and it will not matter, not one bit.
Perfect, considering, that is definitely the way we think about it. People first. Our tool is a support tool for other people. So just the ideal of that. And I love how you said, one, that is not new, because it's not. And I think anytime anything comes around, people kind of will start turning. It's like we move faster than the actual conversation that we need to be having. We just move so much faster. We get worried, which is a fair reaction. But and I think the other thing is that the tool is there to improve what what our end goal ultimately is. So obviously for us, it's instruction, it's belonging, it's all of those things. The tool is designed to do that. If it's not supporting that, it's not beneficial for you.
Yeah, if it's not working, get rid of it. Period. Don't invest any time, energy, and effort trying to make it do something that, in many cases, that I see that, right? People are trying to use tools to do things they were not designed for. And they get frustrated. And it's like, I'm going to spend time, energy, and effort fixing this. Why? Go on to the next thing. The thing you're looking for, it's out there somewhere because somebody else, another human, is having the same frustration. And I can guarantee you that humans, because we are problem solvers by nature of who we are, right? Someone's going to solve for that. And they're going to do it in a way that's going to be meaningful for you. So don't get so hung up in the tool. Use them. I love tools. I'm a techno girl. I love to try new stuff, and I'm not afraid of technology. I think it's super, super cool, but doesn't mean I always stick with it.
Listen, as a pen and paper calendar person, You are speaking my language, because I do agree that it just doesn't matter if it doesn't work for you.
Right. Right. Absolutely.
So I guess my last question, as it relates to you, before we get to my lightning round fun questions, is related to just what does the future look like for you in the PASS Foundation? So ultimately, you have a lot going on, but I know there's always so much more happening. So talk about, what do you all have kind of coming up next?
So we're doing a lot of work around trying to figure out what does it mean to be an education organization, nonprofit in the United States today. It's tough, right? The world is changing. We talked about technology changing rapidly. Well, the world itself is changing very, very rapidly. And so we have to figure out sort of what is it that we need to be focusing on working on right now today, but also 5, 10, 20 years down the road. And again, it's the same sort of gamble that we play with all these other pieces and parts. And so the things that we right now are investing time, energy, and effort in are really thinking about workforce development. So, and I use that really in that K-12 space. If we think about our young learners as emerging workforce one day, like what is the outcome we're all looking for? High school graduation is not enough, right? That's a very low bar. We want our kids, you and I, we have children, your next door neighbor, the kid down the street, a kid in church, take your pick, right? We want all of these kids to grow up to be fully functional adults. We want them to be happy. We want them to be healthy. We want them contributing to society in meaningful ways, right? So to be able to do that, then we have to step back and say, what are we preparing kids for? And what we are preparing them for is to go off and be that amazing citizen. So we have to really think about their journey in learning, their K-12, their post-secondary, their career trade, they're going to work, it doesn't make any difference, is that sort of emerging opportunity to join ultimately into society and workforce. So that's a really critically important piece. And so we think about workforce and what do we need to do for kids to equip them to go off into the world and be that aspiration that we have. The other way that we're thinking about doing that is spending a lot of time thinking about micro environments. So micro schools, micro credentials, stackable credentials, really thinking about the fact that as humans in a big old giant world, we are seeing that our young people are losing themselves in the vastness that is the unknown. That's been accelerated by technology and the accessibility of a world in a way we've not seen in a really long time. So what happens if we pull back in just a little bit and say, what if we create some micro environments or ecosystems, micro schools that are inside of these bigger systems? So, groups of kids learning and thinking together with meaningful adults that then can go on a journey together. They can still do it in a big school, right? That's okay. That's what we have in our community is a massive comprehensive high school, for example. But it's not one school. What if instead it were 100 schools or 100 different things to learn in a really deliberate way? So micro schools is one of the things that we're thinking about. We're also really spending a ton of time, energy, and effort on thinking about how do we make sure that the experiences that we can create, we can put in the hands of many, not the few. And so we spend a lot of time on that. We utilize tools that we've been creating called portable innovation labs, taking our experiences and distilling them down into a box, a set of activities in a box, for example, right? So that we can deploy them to people who are trained educators and not trained educators. You as a parent could utilize something and you as a teacher over here in this community could utilize it. So we're thinking about those types of things an awful lot. And we're also thinking about who should we talk to next.
I love it. I love it. Well, I'm so excited about all that you all are doing. It all sounds amazing, and I think it is so well aligned with where we are headed. Just hearing people that I get a chance to talk to every day, whether it's through just work or through the podcast, we know that this is very heavy on people's mind. Just you saying, high school graduation is not enough. We've definitely heard that conversation over and over again, and schools are slowly acclimating to what that could look like.
Right.
But we know that their time is spread beyond thin. So, of course, having partners that have really drilled down and figured out ways that can support them in this kind of goal is so important. So I love that you all are even thinking about and doing that. And I'm so excited to see what you all do.
Well, thank you.
All right. So before I let you go, I want to ask you two quick questions just for our kind of lightning round. So we're not going to give you too long to think about it, just
Okay.
really quick. So first question is, if you could remove one barrier in education, what would it be?
Transportation. I hear from families so many times. My kid can't take part in that whatever that thing happens to be because I can't get them there.
I used to previously work in public transportation, so this
Oh,
is
look
like
at that.
this is music to my ears. I love it. Okay, very last question. What is your favorite sound?
My favorite sound?
Yeah.
Oh, God, I don't even have to think about that. My favorite sound is the great outdoors, standing in the mountains.
Well, with that, I want to say thank you so much for joining me. And I want to welcome you to come back anytime you like to share anything else that you and the Past Foundation are working on.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you having me and spending the time with you, Dominique. Thank you so much.
That's all for today's Active Listener. Thanks for tuning in. Share your comments on this episode on our Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn social media pages. You can visit our website at lightspeed-tech.com to learn more about our mission to ensure every student hears every word. And subscribe to our podcast wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Until next time, let your listening be as active as your learning.